Hello, friends. I'm Mary Frangi, Program Specialist at the Trauma Research Foundation. Welcome to the fourth session of Inspired Parenting, Parenting from an Attachment Trauma Perspective with Daphne Lunder. Oh, this is our fifth session. This is a free 8-part monthly series, and whether you're a parent or you interact with children in other capacities, we're sure you'll find this information encouraging and useful, and find Daphne's hands-on tools a resource that you can apply right away. And this work applies to people from 18 months to 100 years old. Today's topic is how to regulate your reaction to your child. We'll talk about how to get in touch with what's your underlying feeling, and how to respond to your own feelings of rejection, fear, and anger. Volunteers can come on screen with Daphne to ask a question. To volunteer, all you have to do is raise your hand at any time and keep it raised. Please keep your questions relevant to today's topic and take notice of the disclaimer notification. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. It tells YouTube this content is valuable and they'll show it to more people. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Daphne Lunder. Daphne is a child and family therapist with over 25 years of experience. She is a certified trainer, supervisor, and consultant in Theraplay and dyadic developmental psychotherapy, and co-author of the book Theraplay, The Practitioner's Guide. Daphne has successfully treated children and their parents from various backgrounds, including children raised in orphanages, those with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, those exposed to domestic violence and community violence, and children of parents with chronic mental illness and attachment wounds. Daphne provides training and consultations for psychologists and psychotherapists around the world. Daphne, we're so grateful to have you. Take it away.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks to Mary and Abby. Okay, friends, this is one of my favorite subjects. It's how to control our own reactivity to our child based on what's going on inside of us. And that can help you to be able to see what the child is needing in a more objective way. Okay. So that's it's essentially the premise of all of my work, because the attachment perspective says that you have a background, and your own childhood background non-consciously has set the way you react to conflict with intimate partners. And your child is definitely a very close, intimate partner. Okay. It's a very, very touchy relationship, right? So that is non-conscious, and it's like a script in our head. And it could say something like, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'll never make it through this. This is all my fault. I'm unwanted. Things that we learned from our childhood, and they're non-conscious. Maybe things like I mess up everything, or everybody is against me, or I'm all alone, or, like things don't turn out okay, or everybody leaves me. It's like very, very primary scripts, and they come up when you're in conflict with another person that you really care about a lot. Of course, your child is one of the people you care about the most. It's so brings up so much desire to help and fix and control. And so that's why those scripts are going to come up even more so. Well, okay, so that's the premise, is that when your child is having a reaction, whether they don't want to put their shoes on, whether they're hitting your other child, whether they don't want to go to school, whether they're calling you names, whether they're creating chaos in your house and, dirtying, or saying, doing things they're not supposed to, or they're staying out and not reporting to you and you're really worried about what they're doing, all those things are legitimate. So yeah, you do need to find ways to, find solutions or compromises or consequences or dealing with the objective situation. And I'm not taking away from that at all. But what we say in our mind, in our non-conscious mind, gets in the way of us being able to work with that. So that's what this is for. So I'm going to ask you actually to take a piece of paper and a writing utensil, and I prefer you write this down rather than doing it on the computer. So I invite you to do that. Grab a pen and a paper if you're willing to do this with me. It's going to be an exercise that's experiential. So while I let you go ahead and take your paper and collect your paper and pen, let me also say something additional. That attachment perspective is also a nervous system perspective, in the sense that we have a automatic response even from just our nervous system putting us into fight, flight, freeze, or flee. And that also is a really very primary set point that you probably got when you were little, when you were an infant, in terms of do you react with anger and try to fight, or do you act by freezing and getting really small and getting immobile, or do you try to run away by, perhaps using substances to try to numb out? That is also something that I want to help you get in touch with. So let's go ahead and think about it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an exercise where I'm going to lay it out for you. First, I'm going to ask you to think of something where, when you're in this situation, where when you're with your child, you are feeling like you don't have the tools, you're not equipped, so you get really angry, or you check out, you feel hopeless, or you give up, or you start, like nagging or controlling, things like that. What situation is that? So you're going to call that up in your mind. I'm just going to walk you through what we're going to do. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to tune in to what our body is feeling. So I'm just going to ask you to kind of do a body kind of scan and see if you can feel any sensations in your body. Then I'm going to ask you to try to listen what you are saying to yourself about yourself, your non-conscious voice. So we're going to try to find out what that is. You're going to be then, after you tune that in, we're going to see if we can think of a way of saying a message of self-compassion to that voice. So something to counter the voice, which is going to be a message of self-compassion. And then we're just going to breathe. And that's it. Okay, so I'm just walking you through. And now let's go ahead and follow along with me. So you got your paper and your writing utensil. And I invite you now. By the way, if you don't want to do this, you can just kind of listen and let it sort of be on the side of you. So you don't have to do this. You can just, if this feels too intense, you can just watch, but not participate actively, and you'll still get something out of it. If you're feeling too triggered or something like that, that's okay. So think of a situation in which you're with your child and you're feeling, like you're unhappy with your behavior because you're feeling angry. You don't feel empathy for your kid. You don't feel like you understand them, or you feel like you just want to, give up or something like that. Okay. So think of a time, maybe you have more than one, and go ahead and write it down. Just one sentence, like one brief sentence, like when he, knocks over his sister's Legos and doesn't seem to be remorseful, then I get really mad at him. Something simple. I'm going to give you a moment. Okay. Okay. If you have more than one thing, it's okay to just just pick one of the things that we're going to work on. Now, what I want you to do is, if you can, if you're willing to, go back into that situation by either closing your eyes and try to conjure up where you were, what you were saying, what was around you, so that you're actually in that situation. If you can go back in your mind's eye, some people can do that by closing their eyes. Some other people might prefer not closing their eyes and looking into like just a focal point in the room. But the reason I'm asking you to go back into the situation with your senses, what you were seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling, the scene, is because that'll help you to get into your body as to where the feelings were, where the sensations were. And if you're not up for that, you don't have to do this. But I'm just going to give 30 seconds for you to recall the scenario. Okay, and if you're able to see what the interaction was like, what your child was doing, what you were doing, then maybe the next thing is that I'm asking you to do is see, when you think of that, what do you feel in your body? So right now, I want you to just kind of become aware by going from the top and noticing from the top of your head and pretending like you're doing like a body, check-in from top, and see from your head and your face, your neck, your shoulders, your chest, your abdomen. If there's things that you might be feeling as you're thinking about the situation, maybe you feel like some constriction in your neck or tightness in your shoulders, or maybe you feel like your breathing is shallow. Maybe you feel like you have heat in your face. Maybe you feel frozen. Maybe you feel like your hands are cold as you're thinking about that. Or maybe you feel there might be some butterflies in your stomach, or a weird sensation in your stomach, your abdomen, your intestines. And that's what I want you to tune into just by looking, just doing a check-in by going like this from the top of your head and then going down to your torso and then through your hips and your rear and going to your legs. And notice, where is a feeling, a strange feeling, any kind of tingling or tightness or any movement. And if you can identify that, then you can write it down. If you can not identify a feeling in your body, it's really okay. This might be a first time you've done that, so you might not have a sense of where those sensations are, and that's really okay. If you do, write it down. Okay. Now, staying with the scenario or the situation that you were in, that you were thinking of, conflict point or whatever, the tension, or what I want you to do is go back to that situation and think to yourself, if your voice was saying something to yourself about yourself in that moment, what are you saying to yourself? You could be saying something like, about yourself, not about your child. Something like, I feel like giving up. Maybe it's something like that. It could be, I feel like a failure, or I feel like I feel unlovable. I am not a good mom, things like that. Maybe it's something like, I wish I could get out of here. Usually it's a negative message, and it's usually not conscious when you're thinking of it. I'm trying to make it conscious by looking in and noticing from the point of view of like what your body is feeling like and being in that moment, maybe you can hear that voice. Sometimes it's hard to realize what you're saying to yourself. So if you can't figure it out at this moment, that's really okay. So just take a moment and think, what am I saying to myself about myself? Maybe you're saying something like, I'm in trouble, or I should be able to handle this, or I'm in danger. If you can hear that negative cognition, that's what we kind of, or negative core belief, that's what we're call it, write it down. If you have more than one, you can write them. Okay. So to review, what we've done is we've gone into our mind's eye, which is a really great way of being able to touch back into what we were feeling in our body. And just by the memory, you can evoke how you were feeling in your body. We wrote that down. And then the other question is to think of what are you saying to yourself about yourself at that moment? And again, by going into our mind's eye and seeing the scenario, we can become aware of what we're non-consciously saying to ourselves about ourselves. And those two things, what you're feeling in your body and what you're saying to yourself about yourself, is not something to fight against or to judge. It's something to notice. It's something to accept. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. You earned those feelings very honestly. And so the next thing to do is all you have to do is become aware of what your body is feeling, become aware of that negative cognition. And then all we're going to do is just take some nice, easy breaths without judging. So just take a breath in and blow it out. You can count to yourself if you want to count in for a breath of 4 in and a breath of 5 out. 1, 2, 3. And in and out. And in and out. Okay, you're doing really good by holding on to the feeling in your body, that message you're saying to yourself, but also breathing. Okay. And now we're going to go on to this next part. When you become aware of the negative core belief or this negative cognition, well, we want to bring in some message of self-compassion. What is that? A message of self-compassion counters or responds to, in a compassionate way, the negative message or the critical message that your non-conscious mind is telling you. And so one way to think about it is to flip the statement and say something positive. Like if you said, I can't handle this, a message of self-compassion could be, I'm doing the best I can. I can show up right now. What I have is good enough. I'm valuable. Okay. If the message that you're saying, the negative message is, I want to give up, maybe, then a message of self-compassion could be something along the lines of, I have what to offer. My presence is good enough. I have enough strength for the moment. Something like that. If maybe your message that your non-conscious belief is that I'm unlovable, or I'm a failure, or nobody's on my side, then a message of self-compassion could be, I'm okay as I am. I'm valuable. I'm doing the best I can. Okay. If your message, your negative belief is, it's all my fault, or I'm a failure, or I'm a bad mom, something like that, then a message of self-compassion could be, I have what to offer, or I can learn from my mistakes, or I can give myself another chance, or I can show up right now despite everything in the past. Okay. So if you want to borrow any of the phrases that I've suggested, maybe you can't think of a message of self-compassion because you're not used to it. You could borrow one of my messages, and if they don't ring true, maybe you could just approximate what something that could be true if you were willing or able to give yourself a chance to get some of that self-compassion. So it doesn't have to mean that you believe it, but you could just try it on one of these phrases. And I encourage you to write that down. Well, you could just write, I'm okay as I am, or I have what to offer. Okay, so that message of self-compassion, go ahead and write it down. Okay. Now that you've written it down, we're going to add that to the exercise. And I'm going to show you how. I'm going to add a little bit of a physical motion to it because it really helps the body when you have like something to do in addition in order to solidify a change. That's sort of the way humans learn. So here's what we're going to do. The reason I backed up a little bit is because I wanted to show you that I can put my hand on my heart, which is what I'm going to suggest that we're going to do. So first, if you have your paper, then you'd be able to review this. Let's start from the top. First of all, think of the scenario where you were feeling you were in conflict with your child and you were, unhappy with what happened because of your reaction. You were unempathic, or you lost your temper, or you felt that you wanted to run away. Go ahead and, if you're willing, to go back to in your mind's eye to that scenario and picture it for a moment. I'm going to give you a moment to see what you were seeing, see and feel what you were feeling, the things that were the dynamics around you. See if you can touch into that feeling if you were kind of noticing in your body, if you feel the constriction or the heat or the butterflies or the tingling. Let that touch into that feeling. It's really okay. Your body is trying to tell you something. It's useful information. And then see if you're calling up that negative cognition, like whatever it was that you wrote down, become aware of that. Or like whatever it was, I'm not a good mom, I'm unlovable, this is hopeless. Or maybe it was, I'm scared. Okay. Go ahead and feel that. It's okay. Now we're going to take some breaths to feel it. Feel those things. It's okay. I'm going to take a couple of nice, easy breaths. Count 4 in and 5 out. It's just a suggestion, but you can count those to yourself. Okay. And now recall what the message that you wrote for your message of self-compassion. Whatever it was. Maybe it's, I can show up right now. My presence is good enough. I can learn from my mistakes. I have what to offer. Okay. Think of that and say it to yourself in your mind's eye. You can close your eyes if you want to. You can look to a focal point. Imagine saying that to yourself. You could say it out loud as well, if you're willing to. I have what to offer. I can show up. I'm good enough as I am. Okay. Here's what I want you to do with that. The message of self-compassion, it really helps when you have emotion. So put your hand on your heart if you're willing to. Put your other hand on your first hand. First thing I want you to do is just feel the warmth of your hand on your chest. Feel it. See if you can feel your chest rising and falling. Feel if your top hand above your bottom hand. And as you breathe, imagine that the message of self-compassion is written right here. So I'm okay as I am. I'm okay as I am. Put that on your hand and put that on your heart. Put your second hand on your first hand and imagine that. I'm okay as I am. And put that into your hand, and then imagine it moving to your heart. Maybe if you feel your breath and your heartbeat, you can also imagine the message of self-compassion going inside to your heart first. And from there, the heart circulates. Send that message, let it go into the place that you were feeling stress or tension or tingling or discomfort. As if it's traveling through your body. Let it go there. It might be a feeling of warmth. It might be a feeling of something that's positive, that's traveling. If not, that's okay. You can't imagine it because just your breathing moves things. Okay? If you would like to, you could rock side to side. Rocking side to side is really helpful, especially if you can say the message of self-compassion to yourself. I'm okay as I am. I can show up. I can learn from my mistakes. Do that if you're willing to. And then we're just going to have a couple of nice, easy breaths. And then I invite you to, if you're willing to, just open up your arms. Open up your arms, put your chest back. Yep. Gratitude to anybody who did try this and those of you who were just listening. Okay, So in a few minutes, we're done with our experiential part of the exercise. And if in a few minutes, I'll ask if people would like to share. And maybe they have questions. What the questions would be around would be, or comments would be, how did it feel? And maybe you had a hard time figuring out what you were saying to yourself about yourself. Or maybe you had, just reflections of how it felt for you or what you learned. If that's the case, if you would like to do that, what you're going to do is raise your hand, and then there's a button on the bottom that says raise hand. And that will let my colleagues know that you would like to come on screen, and then they will promote you to panelist. Then you'll be able to turn your camera on. So, but meanwhile, here is why did I do this? Okay. This is a practice that is like any other practice, just like playing tennis or playing the flute. Anything that you want to learn is a practice and a habit. If you are in a situation, or when you're in it, we're all in the situation with our child or children where we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or we're feeling really angry, or we're feeling hopeless or scared. This practice is something that you can do on the spot. It doesn't have to, once you start practicing, it only takes 30 seconds. You can remember, wait a second, I got to check in with my body. I feel a heat in my face. I feel a constriction in my throat. I feel my shoulders being tense. I feel my arms tingling, whatever it is. Then you check in and think, what am I saying to myself about myself? Like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not capable, whatever it is. Take a couple of deep breaths. If you can't think of a message of self-compassion, sometimes I blank out and I can't remember my message of self-compassion, but I'm okay as I am, it's just fine. I put my hand on my heart. Nobody really notices this, but if they do, you just like, what are you doing? Just like, just noticing my breath, just noticing my heart. Who cares? Just say whatever you want. If somebody's asking you, just be like, yeah, I'm noticing my breathing. The message of self-compassion, rock yourself a couple of times, then open up. And that's all it takes to be able to reset yourself just a little bit so that you can then see what is going on with my child. Yeah, he's running around the room cackling and like throwing things or something, but maybe he's just really tired, or maybe he is feeling scared or worried about something right now. And it allows you to see your child more clearly for what he's needing. Okay. So that is what that's what I'm hoping, is that it like clears up the static or the fog that allows you just to see a little bit more clearly. And you can hear there's like a still small voice, the intuition that says, what is my kid really experiencing right now? I want you to be able to open up to that a little bit by doing this. So you have to try to do it even after the fact, when you're, maybe you had an argument and things didn't go well, and then you're in bed going to sleep and you do this, it still helps. Any step of this still helps. Okay. So I saw a comment. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Someone said, I don't know if it's a good thing, but I got so relaxed that I fell asleep.
Oh my God, it's a wonderful thing.
I'm sorry.
Amazing. No, I mean, if you just get like this much of a moment to relax in the moment, then you free yourself up to be able to see what's going on with your child. So if that helped you at all to be more relaxed, then that's amazing.
Good. Thanks. And I have a question. As I was going through the exercise, when it came to the part about identifying the message, the belief I have about myself, I could pretty quickly identify the feelings, but it was hard to get to the message. Do you have any extra guidance in how to understand what we're thinking about ourselves?
Yeah. So that negative cognition is something that's really, it's murky. It's like deep down in our, in our kishkis. That's like, so it's no surprise that you wouldn't necessarily hear what you're saying. Also, it depends, like if you're really, like if you feel like frozen sort of, or constricted, it's like, it's very hard to also figure out what are you saying to yourself about yourself. So that it's okay. Just stick with the feeling in your body. And probably you could try on something really generic as far as what you might be saying to yourself about yourself. There's usually something about feeling fear, feeling rejection, feeling sadness, feeling hopelessness. Those are some of the things that are really universal. They're all human experiences that babies have, and they accompany all of us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if.
Yeah, it's helpful. I definitely felt a lot of restriction. I noticed it first in my face and in my throat. And then I realized, oh, my neck and my shoulders. And then, oh, wait, it's in my back and into my hips as well. So I could feel all that restriction, and I could feel embarrassment and sadness and fear underneath. So being with that, accepting that, and with practice, I imagine you get to the negative cognition.
I think you actually have. I mean, by saying, I'm embarrassed, I could see how that would vary, or I feel sad. Those are probably very, very, close to what you're saying to yourself about yourself. So I think, like, if you did it again, I bet it would emerge more as like, what are you saying to yourself about yourself? But yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And if anyone would like to ask Daphna a question directly, please just raise your hand and we'll promote you to panelist and you can chat with her. Barbara has a question in the chat. She asks, would you do this with children?
That's a really good question. Okay. I'm thinking about it because I'm going back in like my catalog of experiences with kids. I think that this is really very like it's very free form and requires quite a bit of the ability to regulate yourself and think about this. So the people who I've done it with, who I think the youngest in this format, or maybe somebody who's 16. So I do this a version of this with younger kids, but I would do it much more, I think, with more of a storytelling voice. I would do more guessing. I would try to make the the scenario of what they were stressed about come to life and be more dramatic about it. So I think I do it, but it just it's got to be somehow more like compelling, more active and more dramatic, and make more guesses and suggestions. And so, yeah, that's how I would answer that.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So I think for a lot of people, when they're feeling, when they're sensing their own dysregulation and they're feeling irritated and irritable, it's finding that pause to do an exercise like this can feel impossible. There's so much chaos going on around you. Any thoughts about how to not let the dysregulation sort of get the best of us and be able to find that little bit of space to pause?
Yeah. No, that's like a classic question. Okay. So all we want as humans is to be able to do something about something. Okay. We want to be able to like have control and mastery and a sense of agency. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, like we have this, let's say our kid is getting really pulling, like pushing our buttons, and we're getting triggered because we want to yell, or we want to take control, or we want to rescue. And it's just a feeling that comes like a wave. And this tool is giving an opportunity. It's like, I have something to do. This is the something to do. So any part of this practice of becoming aware of how your body is feeling, or the negative cognition, or being able to breathe, or putting your hand on your heart, or rocking back and forth, or thinking of a message of self-compassion, gives us something to do, and it makes it a little less overwhelming, a little less scary, gives us a little bit of time or pause. And so that's all I'm suggesting is just try any aspect of this, and you'll see it's kind of like almost like a snowball. It makes you feel a little bit better, a little bit more in control. And that's all we want, is to be able to like know what to do. So this is something to do. And even if you forgot to do it, you could still do it when you go to sleep.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Bobby. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, no problem. This is bringing me back to when my kids were little, and I would feel like, and I'm kind of have some thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear yours. My 5-year-old, when she came to us, very abused, very dysregulated, and I had so much compassion for her. But these dysregulation, this would last for hours. Longest time was 12 hours. She would rip and tear and fight us, and she was really struggling. But you can only take so much, right? But I would feel like I'm patient. I'm not. And I could never find that space to realize it. And when I was taking notes now is I'm wondering if I was trying to be too perfect, like this poor child. And I didn't allow myself to say, poor me, this is really tiring. Oh, I'm getting activated. But at the time, and for 3 years, I would say, it felt like I went from, I am so patient, to I'm not, in such a split second. And I would tell my husband later, what happened? Why can't I see the switch?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a really good description. Here's the thing, if you are dealing with a kid who is dysregulated and having, this just horrible PTSD from abuse and neglect, and it's for 12 hours at a time, or, even an hour at a time, it's extraordinarily hard not to go from patient to like losing your cool and, and yelling. So, or doing whatever that was super reactive. So, for the key is you wouldn't have been able to not go, and lose your cool. It's not possible to ask a human being to like be, barraged by that for too long. The thing that you would have to do is like, you need to find some sort of break. I mean, anything, if you're trying to raise this child most of the day by yourself because your partner is not home, it's almost impossible not to, scream and yell or do things that you regret. It's so the question is to what extent can you sort of, just like you said, not try to be perfect and, use any tool that you have to try to keep the child regulated. And to me, it's okay if it, and again, there's a disclaimer on this, which is that I'm not telling everybody, what to do. And this isn't therapy for anybody, but in my opinion, it is better if you're all alone. It's better to let the child watch TV and give them snacks and let them be a lot more permissive, because it's unbelievably difficult to deal with a kid who's, screaming and traumatized. I mean, it's next to impossible to ask. So you really, really need help to be able to work with that child. So if you didn't have any help and you had to deal with the child alone, then I would give yourself a ton of compassion, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what's interesting is when I'm reflecting back on this, it's been like 15 years now. In fact, she's an A student in college now. She's home from college and she's doing great.
Oh, yeah. Everybody, did you hear that? Everybody?
Yeah.
Everybody, did you hear that?
she's she still struggles. We met with a trauma OT today. She still has different things that come up that she struggles with, but she's, for the most part, so much more regulated. But my scenario I didn't fully explain was my husband and I would tag team.
Okay, good.
But what I didn't do was I couldn't recognize that I was about to dysregulate myself. And I would kind of do I got it, kind of like the mama bear, I'm in control.
I see.
And then I'd lose it and go, oh, wait, come, let's switch. But I always was like, why didn't I switch 5 minutes ago? Why didn't I know I was reaching my limit? And I think it was like my own pride, my own, maybe that sense of this poor child, I can bear this is what I'm thinking maybe. But it just felt so much like it wasn't that I was pushing through dysregulation or I was like, I'm in control. I'm not in control.
I see. I see.
And I had someone to tag out to.
Got it. Yeah, that tagging out, one of the most difficult parts is to actually allow the other parent to step in, because you're going from being full on in the mode and in control, and it's like you're really like you're zoned in, you're locked in, and you're hyper focused. And so when somebody says tap tap, time to switch, and you're like, ow. And that's something that fortunately or unfortunately, I've had to work with a lot of parents as couples with that whole mechanism. Like, you need help talking with your co-parent, with your teammate about the process of switching out. That's not an easy thing to do. But when the 10 minutes is up, or when your teammate taps you out, you have to agree that you're getting out, whether you like it or not, because the other person is much more apt to be able to see what's going on than you are, and it's really humbling.
I think that timing factor, like if we said whatever it might have been at the time, like if 30 minutes we switch, doesn't matter what you're at, doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a calming technique or whatever, 30 minutes we switch. I think I think timing might have been helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember once when we would switch, the girls' therapist would say to me, now you can go for a walk. He's got this. And I would say, no, I can't. No, I can't.
Yes, you do got to get out of there.
No, I got to be right there. No, I got to listen. What's he doing? Anyway, but thank you. This has been very helpful. And because now I'm helping foster parents in my new job as a trauma coach.
Oh.
So this will be good techniques on how to do it better than I did.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for your work, and I'm sure you're doing really great. So, um, and in case you didn't get this, because I think it's pretty intuitive, but this happens with all of our close, intimate partners, anybody who's emotionally close. So maybe you did this with a child, but maybe you don't have a child. You were coming here for work or something and you don't have a child. This also is really very, very much the same process of a partner, a romantic partner, a really, really close friend. So this works for many. Also, a very, a boss, somebody who's got power over you, but really helpful too. Yeah. So I have time for one more question. And perhaps if people don't want to ask a question, you could share your reflection in the chat. I guess there might be another question that's coming up, but I'm not sure. I see a hand raised.
Hi, Daphna. So my question is for if my partner, he struggles with opening up, and an exercise like this would be really tough for him to adapt, because opening up and admitting his faults per se as a parent is kind of admitting to himself that he's a failure, or in some sense of that word. So what would be your advice to pitching this to somebody that is closed off or has trouble expressing themselves?
So I guess thanks for that really good question. And I can understand what you're saying about people, who are avoidant of this kind of inner reflection about, like, what are you saying to yourself about yourself? That seems like this particularly sensitive point here, because he wouldn't identify with saying, I'm unlovable, or I'm I'm not a good dad, or, something like that. Right. That's the part he wouldn't have a easy time with. Okay. So I wonder if the only thing that he would need to do is be interested in tracking his physiologic reaction, in terms of if he gets really upset and he starts yelling or retreats and doesn't come out and, ignores his loved one, or would he be interested in just breaking down that mechanism and slowing it down? That's the question. So the pitch that you would try is just to say, maybe something like, we have a body response that goes like this, and it sort of has this sense of, like, where we get tense in our shoulders or in our chest gets tense, or we feel a surge of heat or something. And if you track it just by noticing it, and then you can also, when you notice it, take a few breaths and say something positive to yourself, like, I got this, something that's less like psychologically, minded, something like that. And then it is something that you could then become more open to then working with your child and seeing what they need.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that it can be tough in his case, for a lot of it's thinking I'm not being good enough, or whenever I bring something like this to his plate, like, oh, like, this would really be beneficial for a child. It's more of, well, am I lacking that you think that I need to do this? So thank you for bringing that up, and I'll make sure to phrase it in that way.
Oh, yeah. And you can, I guess, anytime you can tell a person, like, you're a really good dad, like, if you tell a person that 50 times, it's easier for them.
Thank you.
Okay, dear friends, thank you for participating. And Mary, our time is up, right?
Our time is up. And
Okay.
thank you for another great session. The experiential exercise was really useful, really, really helpful. Daphne, we are so grateful to you for this series. Thank you so much. And thank you, Bobby, our volunteer. We really appreciate your vulnerability and your questions. There was a lot of appreciation for you in that question in the chat. Join us next time for session 6, how to respond to a child's nonverbal skills. And all of the previous sessions are available as recordings when you log into your TRF account and go to My Purchased Content. Working behind the scenes is Abby Bueno, our TRF customer service specialist. I'm Mary Frangie. We look forward to seeing everyone next time. And in the meanwhile, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, friends. Ciao, ciao.